by Armin, Franzen, the DP, and Hans Steinbichler, for the director of A Whole Life, their new movie, which is an adaptation of a book which we'll talk about in a little while. First off, we're going to step off and show you the promo trailer. Now, this is a trailer that's made for cinema owners to give them a feel for the film. It's not a theatrical trailer as such, but it does give a really good overview of the film. I was fortunate enough to see a full screening of it on Thursday at the post-production house before either of these guys have seen it, so I can say quite safely that it is a very powerful and incredibly moving film. So we'll step off and show the trailer, then come back on and have a bit of a conversation. So let's set this in a little bit of context. Hans and Armin both worked together on season 3 of Das Boot, which was the first time you'd worked together, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. The novel was written in 2014, and you wanted to adapt it from quite early on, didn't you? How long did it take to get to the point where you got the okay?
Well, this novel, A Whole Life, was published in 2014, and I grew up in the mountains, and for me this novel was like a 10-year chance to do a work which is for me absolutely timeless. So I tried to get it for a long time, and in 2019 we managed to say that we can do it. That was the beginning.
And you brought Armin on board, and then the first thing the novel, a lot of people said it's unfilmable because it's a very much an internal monologue of this person's literal whole life. How early on did you start? What was the first thing was trying to fix that point of view, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course. Like when you read the novel, I think, and you think about to make a movie out of that. First of all, I had the feeling that you only can fail because it's so internal, and it's just driven by one character, like mostly driven by one character. And you observe this character and you walk through his life, and but you have to get this magic to get into his head, into his feelings, because in the novel there's a lot of things are expressed about his feelings, how he feels and how he accepts life, even when he has big problems or tragedies. So that was the first thing we had been talking about. What is our relation to the character? Like how close are we to the character with the camera? That was the first question. And so we decided, like I think it was in one of our first conversations, we had been talking, like we were standing there and we said like, hey, what about this distance with the camera? How does it feel? Because we were sure about that the spectator, that it's very important to feel that, to feel that distance. And we were convinced that that is one of the main issues in the visual concept or in the emotional concept. So we said, hey, I was just standing there with the camera, and we decided, hey, it must be like 1.5 meters or 2 meters. That's our general distance to the character. So then we thought, like, okay, we don't want to end up in close-ups only, meaning like we need medium shots. So then you end up saying, okay, if we shoot now with a S35 sensor, that distance, and we want to have a medium shot, we end up with a 21mm lens, meaning like a wide angle. So as we knew that there's another big player in that movie, the mountains and the nature, which is really a character, which gives him the power or will give the spectator will transport all these feelings he has. It's an emotional expression. I said to Hans, okay, if we shoot now with the 21 millimeter, we'll have a problem because it will not feel like when we on location and we stand there in the mountains. You will not have that feeling. It will not transmit because 21 millimeter, and the medium shot, the mountains will disappear. They will. The relation is not true anymore. So we were thinking about how can we reach the right relation between character, camera, and the nature. So there was only one choice that I said then we have to go large format with a large format anamorphic lenses. So there you get this relation, and it feels like more or less exactly like you're standing there, what we observed or what we wanted to have, and we had all this punch, the emotional punch of the character and the feeling like standing, like we wanted the audience to have this feeling, to be in the mountains with him. So this was, that was our first start into the visual concept.
And you were also going against the conventional wisdom, really, weren't you, of shooting in the mountains? Because they, that meant big lenses, heavy kit, whereas most people rather go for small lenses.
It was kind of a discussion because, like always, there's some movies or screenplays where everybody knows how to shoot it. In this case, everybody thought, we must be flexible, and we need equipment which is like light equipment, and we have to be spontaneous, and we have to be lightweight and everything, And I think that's, for me, absolutely the wrong start for a visual concept, So, first of all, you have to think about what you want to reach, what emotions you want to transmit. And for us, it was more important to have this close feeling to the character, and the mountains. And we would have destroyed this feeling if we would have chosen like a smaller camera, smaller lenses, and different equipment. So that's clear. And for this, it means, because we didn't have that big budget, it means you are limited in another way, time-wise, So you say, it takes maybe like 10 minutes more, no, let's say like half an hour more per day to put the heavyweight equipment up there. So over 47 shooting days, there's some hours. That could be like this. It's not like this, but I just try to give an example. Meaning you have probably less time, and you have to know this before, and you have to talk about it. And we were not afraid of risking it and limit ourselves, because we would rather say, okay, we just have time for one shot for the scene, than having 5 shots with the wrong equipment.
So Hans, do you think it was a benefit bringing a guy from Berlin who's not really spent much time in the mountains, that he'd have a totally fresh take on?
It's indeed, it's a very good question. The thing is, the basis of of us working together was season 3 of Das Boot, and for me it was absolutely revolutionary to step with Armin into a creative work. I never experienced some steps and some techniques of preparation before. I really have to admit that. For example, we have a Bible a shot list Bible for Das Boot, and we also have a shot list Bible for a whole life, and it's a thing. I have it on the iPad as Armin too, and it's a work that's about 260 or 80 pages, and you can go through it. It's like it's the film you see. We did storyboarding, classical. We had a fantastic guy that we brought from Prague, from Das Boot, who is so fast and he's a genius. You can talk to him and he will scribble and do that. But then we also went to the locations, and Armin is taking photographies of the locations, not like going in and saying, well, that's a room and we do 5 shots. We had of the locations. We had like 300 or 400 shots that we would take. They were not taken accidentally. Armin took them, and we would sit together, and these were shots where the angles would differ like 3 to 4% or so. We would choose it, and literally almost every shot that you saw is in that book. It's set.
Yeah.
And that was our advantage. We didn't lose half an hour with heavy equipment. We gained like 5 hours a day with preparation.
Because you knew the shot you were
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
And there was absolutely no random shot in this whole movie. Even when we were working with another guy who was doing Steadicam, so it was scripted, it was told, we were totally in a plan. And I never thought how free you are in expression if you have a plan.
Right.
Because all the people think it's the other way around. It is not, definitely.
And the mountain environment is it's a very fickle environment. And we were talking the other day, so you had to go in this with an open mind, an acceptance of what nature was going to do whilst you were working there. And that, I guess that plan helped you manage all of that. And as you expressed it so well the other day.
Yeah. As I said, that the nature is a big player in that movie. There was also one thing I had a thought in the beginning, that we as filmmakers have to act like the main character, we have to accept the nature and we cannot fight against it. And you often come, it's obvious that you have the situation and you have a concrete plan what to do, and then it seems that the nature destroys your your plan, what you want to do, but that's also a wrong mindset, You have to be awake and accept it, like the character, accept the conditions, and then you'll earn like gifts from the nature. And we try always, if there are like 2 ways of producing a movie, we always decide for the risky one. Let's say it like this. Yeah, the risky one, but limitations, than being on the safe side. So, for example, there was this one major decision because I said our shooting time was quite limited because so we had like 6 hours of shooting because of logistics per day. So meaning you can decide if you want to have the special light conditions and magic light or whatever. You can decide to catch it in the morning or to catch it in the evening. So now you're shooting like in the mountains, meaning in the morning to catch this magic light would mean like the crew has to be in darkness. They have to put everything there. Probably you have to make a rehearsal in the darkness to be ready for that magic moment, So I said to Hans, hey, please let's put the whole schedule always to the end of the day. And Hans agreed. But there's one thing, because you risk a lot, because in the mountains the thunderstorms come always in the evening, in summertime or in springtime. So that was a big risk, but I said it's the only chance because we don't have to prep ourselves in darkness, But to wrap a set is possible in the darkness because everybody knows then the set, you know, and they were like quite dangerous and crazy sets to reach, and so we took this decision. And I remember like the production, they told us, you're completely crazy to put the schedule in the evening, because it happened a lot of times that we had to run because a thunderstorm came. The mountain security guys, you know, they just said like, okay, in 10 minutes everybody has to leave. Or there were situations where the whole equipment, they said like, equipment stays here, everybody run now. And everybody has to run into the car. Yeah. So as we didn't have that much shooting days and the budget was not that big, we knew there will not be any additional shooting day. We can lose it, or we even have to limit ourselves more and more. So these moments, you know, when you sit during the thunderstorm in the car and you have to shoot like, for example, the scene when they kiss for the very first time, and you sit there and you're like, fuck, it's not stopping, the thunderstorm, it goes on and on and on. And then you get a little bit nervous because we were risking. But we never said, after an experience like that, we never said, oh, let's change the schedule. You know, because every weekend, the first AD and the production came and said, could we please change the schedule? Could we just... And we were like, no. Yeah. And but you know, it was. I think it was the right decision. It was absolutely the right decision, and it's a thrill as well because you have to, you know, you have to trust the nature. You have to have some faith, and there's critical moments where you think, oh Jesus Christ, are we going to capture this? But then you have to breathe in, breathe out, like the main character. Yeah. Acceptance, and then believe in it, and then it can happen. But you must be that free that you can limit yourself even more, or you can go guerrilla style, or that you say, okay, that was the plan, but we change it, you know. And I think that's the best way to shoot the movies, to risk something, not to have everything, to risk something. Yeah. And that's like more important if you have the big player nature with you. You know?
And we should also mention about the lookup table that you'd spent years perfecting that you used throughout this.
Yeah. It's like, there was another thing, because shooting in the mountains, the contrast is so, you have such a high contrast and you cannot manipulate the environment. We didn't have the budget, or you don't have the time, or the location doesn't allow it. So you cannot regulate your contrast sometimes. Sometimes you can just hold a polyboard, you know, and sometimes even this is like, it's too windy to hold it, you know. There's this thing that you need I think it's very important that you have a lookup table, which you can trust, you know. And I did with a friend over years. We were getting deep into lookup tables, and we created like really complex lookup tables, like talking about the contrast, also about the colors, you know, the green in the mountains, and it's all an issue. Because at one point you want to be like naturalistic, at the other point you want to have a cinematic look. So, and then being at the set, I said to Hans, you know, we have to make one deal, and the deal is what you see is what you get. Meaning, what we shoot at the location is like 95% of the result. What we will see in the final after the final grading. I said I have this lookup table, you know, we did this lookup table, but it's very important that we always confirm what we see is what we get. Because through that, if we trust the lookup table and we don't say, later in the color grading we will do the mountains, we will put some contrast or we will make it brighter or darker or whatever I said, no. We have to accept the lookup table because in that case, when you accept it, it will influence the way you do the shots, you know? And it must be like a deal, you know? We have to take it serious, you know? And that is what happened because, you know, when we started to frame, we spent quite a time to say, is it that's it? Yeah, that's it. And we saw exactly the result, which will be in the movie, you know? And that changed our way, how we pictured the nature and the characters. And I think it's very important because this can influence the way you work in the nature, you know? Because a lot of people, they shoot in the nature, they say, we cannot manipulate it. You know, in the post-production, I'll make this brighter, this darker, and then, you know, a little bit of blue, and then it will have a big punch. I said, no, that's the wrong way. We have to choose another way. So that's the reason why I'm a big fan, to shoot with the filters and the lookup table. What you see is what you get. Yeah. And that was also, I think, it was a very, very important decision in our work. Yeah, and it changed and influenced the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that influence your direction at all, Hans? Did you? Because actually, you told me you didn't look at any dailies either, did you? Mm. No. Did you watch any of the dailies?
Of course, I watched the dailies, yeah, but they were not surprising for me because I had it on the monitor on the day, on the day, and the thing was, as I said, we did thousands of Artemis shots that Armin did, and I saw the shot in the blocking long time ago, so the film was in my head really long time ago. And for me, the dailies were not surprising. So sometimes I also could say, no, I wouldn't take a look at it because they were like we decided to have them. And just to put one more thought to that, it was so interesting for me that we said there are rules for this shooting. There are rules, and we must not go off these rules. They are so important. They are a structure. And if we would give those rules, if we would give them away, there would be chaos. And you know, we had 1 week where we had to give them away. We had to. There was no alternative. And we had a chaos. So for me, it was totally interesting to be put into a system, to be put into a deal with Armin. And we kept to that deal until the end. And we succeeded, although there were many occasions where there were heavy doubts on that. Yeah. But we would remind each other on things like that. So interesting experience.
Yeah.
Really.
And you know, you're exactly right. That if you'd wavered from that, you would have lost the intensity, not of events that are going on in the movie, but the intensity of being connected to Edgar, the main character, through the three actors that play him in different ages.
Yeah, of course. Because in a way we had to concentrate on one thing. It's how can we create the central magic which is not written in the script, you know, to get into his mind. And meaning, you know, we had these shots, we knew how to do them, in what direction or whatever, but the work to get into his mind, when do we see his face, when do we see just a quarter of his face, when do we see him from the back, and the spectator will be in his head, you know? That was the work on the set during the shooting. Because we sometimes were discussing about the distance, you know, or the shot, you know, and we're talking about, is it like this or like this? And we could concentrate on that because, you know, we didn't have a big screen in the mountains. We just had the small screens And we were always asking ourselves, will this punch be there on the big screen? And is that the magic we need, the central moment? Is that like do we open the door for the spectator to feel his emotions, you know? Because it's quite hard if you have, you know, so many scenes with only one character. And that's a hard mission to get that feeling. Because this novel is something, you know, in the end I think the message, the big message is like that humankind is the greatest, you know. And this sounds, yeah, this sounds like a mission you can only fail, you know. You have to be very. It's a delicate work to really get the spectator in that moment, and to have the scenes only with this one character, and not to be bored, or not to have like wrong emotions, or to be too kitsch, to have only kitsch, or being too much fairy tale, being unnatural, being supernatural. We wanted to have like a realistic punch of emotions, and that helped us, all these rules and all these deals, you know. And we really took it serious, you know. Yeah, that was.
And it's interesting, the one point you swap from that kind of fixed point of view to a handheld approach is when he's falling in love. And he circles around Edgar and Maria, and that is so lyrical, because that emotion has so much more of a punch there. When was that choice made?
This, you know, once again, in the beginning, everybody knew how we should shoot the movie, you know, and it was lightweight equipment and a lot of handheld, you know. That was like everybody. It was like this, or most of the people say, "Yeah, it's a handheld movie." So when we started like to do our dramaturgical concept, we realized it's completely wrong, you know. It was in the first moment, you know. And then, you know, it was again a budget thing, like to have the Steadicam in the mountains, you know. And I said like, yeah, but you can shoot from the tripod, you know. And I said like, but we have a character, he's walking all the time. Do you want like a still landscape photography and the actors coming from there and there and there? You lose the whole emotion. So we realized we need a lot of Steadicam, and we were fighting to get it, but we didn't have a Steadicam through the whole shooting, you know. We had, say like 80% or 90, let's say 90. I don't know, I don't remember. So that was clear in the visual concept that that's not a handheld movie, but what was clear at the same moment that we have like emotional peaks. It's maybe a little bit crazy to say this, but in the love story, I think it feels like you watch for the first time a love story a little bit, you know. And it was clear that in this moment that we'll use the handheld moment, or in another, we had it like in 3 scenes, the handheld. But it was not. This was not written down in our Bible. It was like with a question mark,
Right.
Maybe handheld, you know. And I remember the scene, you know, and I came to you and said, handheld, yes, you know, and. So that moment is like really emotional, because it feels so much different, but it only feels different because you have this this dynamic range all the time, like Steadicam or static shots, and in that moment you have like a slight handheld, and it makes this moment so special. Yeah.
Then, actually, we should say the budget was between like 7 and 8 million euros, wasn't it? It was, you know, you've achieved an awful lot on a very small budget there. And I have to say, that emotional heft is there the whole way through the film. When I watched it the other day, I just cried through most of the thing. So it works totally on screen. But there's shots in there, like the avalanche, where traditionally it would have been, you know, an action-filled thing of chaos and everything going on, but you show Edgar as someone who is embedded in that mountain environment. He senses what's happening. I won't spoil the whole thing, but you took an approach that was totally opposite to what a normal film would be. Like you say, the whole process, you know, well, we'll do it this way, do it that way, and, you know, constantly you were... Was that a conscious choice, that you were fighting against preconceptions of how that film should be made?
Yeah, I think that was one of our important and biggest fights in the beginning, that really everyone knew how to shoot this film. There were people who would say, you go into the mountains like with 10 people and then just shoot it. Just shoot it. But going on a location, as I'm in the mountains since 50 years, with my father starting there, I knew you would fail from the beginning. And this decision, Armin and me, we went to choose the anamorphic lenses, and we had one day to take a look at those lenses and to shoot with those lenses and make a trial and error concept. And I mean, we stepped out with the anamorphic Cook lenses, seeing that the idea would merge, that we said. The merger was the person and the mountains, they would cling together, they would get a concept. And I have to admit, I saw many films from the 30s and 40s done in the mountains, which I really admire, you know, that time. But we tried to do a next step for that feeling in the mountains between a person, a lonely person, and the mountains. And that's what we kept for all the time. But it was the preparation. It was really the first step. We started without nothing, and then we did the decision for the lenses, and then we started to think on that basis and giving us rules all the time. And I think this kept us on our track, on our way.
So was it a case of setting yourself, right, these are the boundaries of our shoot? Within that, you know, that's where creativity reigns. You found in each shot you could find the ideal angle wherever it was, but you knew what you wanted to achieve.
If I may say this, Armin, he would stand with the iPad in the mountains, and we had that shot on the iPad, and it was just like looking for the blueprint. But this was not stupid.
Yeah.
This was how we worked. Yeah. Because when I told you we had 400 shots for one location, and we decided for 20 shots then. Yeah. Those were like, it's not 1 meter away from what we had in our Bible.
Yeah. And you started filming in the winter. You did all the winter scenes first, didn't you? So that must, you know, that's the big challenge. You know, from safety, you know, physically filming, the safety point of view. But you had there's some quite challenging scenes to film in the winter. So, you know, for you, was it a bit of a shock working in the mountains for the first time like that?
Well, it was no. It was not. No, I you know, it was an honor for me, and I was like, you know, I was so happy that I have this chance, you know, to be in the mountains. But it was not a shock. I knew everybody was watching me from the first recce. Everybody was watching. This guy. Yeah. And they were making fun all the time, you know. The Berlin guy on the mountains, ha ha ha. But as I grew up on countryside, I know a little bit. I feel it when people are watching you and when you're under surveillance. No, it was like for me it's just like it was a big gift to be there with all these experts, and also like Hans, he spent so much time in the mountains to observe them and to learn from that. And I spent in the end I was from the first recce to the last shooting day, I was over 1 year. I saw one location in the mountains, and that's just like something wonderful to have that, And also, I was like, you asked me yesterday if I had sleepless nights or because the locations were so crazy to shoot with, and I remember, especially in the winter time, in the morning when you on the way to the set, that's so powerful and so magic. And there, when you accept what all the things I said, accept the nature and feel the nature, all problems are gone, because there's something bigger, because our locations, they were like, it was really difficult locations. A lot, I remember you were on the first recce, and during the production, people would say like, who did this? Who's the location supervisor on that project? Because they choose the location, it's like a catastrophe for the movie, for movie making, You remember this? They were all like, and we shot, and Hans was, we have to shoot there. Yeah. And it was right, but I was never shocked, or I think it gives you a lot of power, Yeah. It's like every day you go up into the mountains and you're like, fuck, this is so powerful.
But just to chime in, for the winter shooting, you have to see we shot in end of January. We were shooting on a height of 2,500 meters with full snow. It means we woke up at 5 o'clock, we went off 5:30, and it took us, with snowcats and so on, it took us 2.5 hours to bring the equipment to the point where we would start to prepare the shoot. Yeah. And then, of course, we had only 10 light hours, yep. Yeah, and you couldn't risk to start so early that no one could see anything in the darkness. So we were extremely limited, but due to our preparation, it was clear. I think we had 4.5 hours in the winter time for our shooting, and of course that was a shock. Yeah. But we accepted that. We were prepared.
Not 10 hours. I think it was 7 or
even
8.
Even less. Yeah, for daylight.
Daylight. Yeah.
What size crew did you use? How many of you were there on those sort of days?
Well, once again, I didn't.
How big was your crew? How many?
Whoa. I don't know. I had a focus puller assistant. We had a video operator. Second AC we had as well.
But then we had 40 people only for transport, because we could only take 2 people on one snowcat at a time to the mountain. And we had to bring 50 people up there. Yeah. And there was no road. No. It was just in the snow in 2,000 meters, heavy snow. So transportation was our issue.
Yeah. Logistics. So you're getting through, the winter, which a lot of those intense scenes. For you, growing up in the mountains, was this almost like coming home? Was it almost like, you could suddenly everything you'd grown up with and your parents had grown up with, you were actually combining both sides of your life?
Yeah, it's interesting. As a filmmaker, you will notice this. There is no private life. If you're doing films, you have no private life. But I had one thing. I had the mountains beyond my filming life, and in this time, for the very first time, I combined those two lives, and it was interesting for me because it was like I knew everything, every step I took. in the mountains with my father or so, of course you have it in your body, and so I felt like home.
Yeah.
On every set, I felt like home, and this was a big advantage. Yeah, I felt like home. I had my mountain equipment on, like being private. Yeah, but it was now private for the job, and it felt, of course, wonderful. And the interesting thing was I could share it with Armin as a. I mean, you are a newbie in the mountains, kind of. Yeah, although you went into some hills in Western Germany or so. It was very interesting. I could share that, yeah?
Yeah.
But he would adapt to that. He was the kind of guy who was a cameraman, and it was no difference for him. Unless he would fall down or he would, that was a danger, of course.
The story has a mythical edge to it. You know, there's events from, again, I won't spoil the movie for people, which will come out in November, I think, isn't it? It's aimed to be released.
Yeah.
And you're right, if you'd moved from your viewpoint at any point in that, you'd have broken the spell, wouldn't you?
Once again, I think.
If you'd stepped out of that viewpoint that you had, you'd have broken the spell, wouldn't you? It would have, the mythical element of it, the fairy tale almost, like you were saying the other day. That
was, I think, from my point of view, that was the most important work to balance this, you know, being like naturalistic, being cinematic, the balance between like fairy tale and realistic storytelling, and to capture that feeling. I think that was the main work on that. And that was only possible through our corset, you know.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the internal scenes where you've got you're in farmhouses, taverns, and various locations. What were your considerations for lighting in those?
It's of course, as it is like a period piece. First of all, you ask.
Actually, they were locations, weren't they? Most.
There's nothing shot in a studio.
Yeah.
So, and there's almost no VFX in it because we wanted to, like any artificial thing would have destroyed this. This was again, in the prep time. They said like, you have a lot of cable cars. We do it in VFX, in post-production. I said to Hans, for me, no, whatever happens, no VFX, because anything artificial will destroy that. But back again to the lighting in locations like, you mean like tavern or something? Yeah, it's like a period. Yeah, you ask yourself again, like, how can you light this? Like, because some scenes are before electricity, and it's a big theme. Electricity is a big theme in that movie, because in the end, one part of this movie is like progress versus nature. Let's say it like this. And the electricity, you have to be sensibilized how electricity is changing the world, with all the things during getting this technique, because Egger is part of it, he's part of the progress as well. So the light was like a very important decision, how to light this tavern when you only have like the candles, and shooting in a real location where it's like sometimes you cannot put everywhere candles because it's too dangerous, because this location was under the how do you say it, Denkmalschutz, protected by
law.
By law, So you start to think about, again, the budget is a problem. So you start to think about how did it feel to shoot, to sit in such a location, And first thing, what everybody thought what is to do to have the very dark walls, you know. And we had been talking a lot about it because I had almost no possibility to put some lights in the, because the ceiling was so not high, and we had to shoot very fast, so there was not a studio construction. So we had been talking a lot about how was this in this period, you know, and we said like, yeah, it was not that dark walls, you know. So you remember this, that we decided to have like a bright walls, but the feeling of the light, so very dimmed light. And of course this again like the ruled our aesthetic and how we light this, you know. And then of course there's a change, you know, when electricity comes, and we're always like treating it very very sensible, like to feel how people feel in that time when electricity came, what it means for them, you know, and this progress. So yeah. I don't know, did this answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, because again, you're never taken out of that character's soul through the movie. You know, that's where, straight from the first point you see him on screen, you're you're inside him, kind of thing, and it carries on throughout, right through to in the 70s when he's there. Did that pose problems? You know, okay, we're talking about all the bits in nature, but then there's a whole chapter of the movie that is him in the village as it changes from a remote alpine village to one that has electricity and cars going through it and supermarkets and buses.
Yeah, of course, that it's you know, we had this village where he almost like he didn't grow up in a village, but near the village. So he's walking through that village several times, and of course that was a big thing, how we could transport this whole progress in that village with our limited budget, you know, because we didn't have the budget to say, okay, we put like big practicals there, or we have access to all the houses and we can put everywhere light inside the houses. That was not possible at all, you know, not at all. So we were talking a lot about this, how first decision was, okay, he's like, and it was in the script, he's walking through this village through the time, like several times. And then we just try to put the budget in the right place to feel this change of progress, or the change of history, you know, with the Nazis, or, you know, or with the workers, you know, which come with the progress, you know, and also with the vehicles, you know, and but we were quite limited in that, because we had another problems, for example, like talking about the street, because it was like a asphalt street, you know, in the village, and for us it was a big deal to cover it, you know, for the scenes in the 1910 or 20s, in the 20s, you know, because it didn't exist then, you know, and but that's a budget thing, you know. It's like
but maybe one remark. Once again, to our rules, we were extremely limited. We couldn't. We had to define an angle where you couldn't take a look 1 meter to the left or right. But in this angle, we were all in.
Yeah.
So you were surprised with our budget.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's right. And this was because we turned limitation into advantage. I would express it like this. And once again, because it's the work of Armin, what is discussed here, this limitation, to put it into advantage, was this talking it all over until the end. And we took weeks and weeks to build up a 300-page sheet for a movie with everything in it. the producers could go up and down this book and take a look and measure it and everything. And that's why the film looks great, because we said, no, we don't want to cover it all. We limitate us to blocking it with 5 shots, but those were kind of perfect. And I don't want to exaggerate, but for us, those were perfect.
So that scouting you did when you were taking those pictures, was it just the two of you going
Yes.
and doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the 2 of us.
Yeah.
It was the 2 of us in the evening. The first AD would drop in and ask what happens, yeah? And we could answer every question due to preparation also, yeah? And for me, this is the basic thing of this panel, working with a DOP that is structured like Armin. I never experienced that before. It was new for me. The work was new for me, although our projects were my number 21 and 22 projects that I did, large project. This was a totally new approach for me. The structured work, how we would approach it in the head, how we would hard work on that booklet. That took us time and time and time, and we were so tired after. And we had to work on the weekends, because
Really?
of course you have to, you run out of time if you are careful like that.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, the questions from Armin to what I wanted to tell, he would haunt me with that questions,
Yeah.
And he would haunt me until I would answer. And maybe he would be more defined and would say, no, what do you want to explain? What do you think about that? I think, feels good. No. And he would go on and go on, yeah? It was a process. It took much power, and effort and so on. But it paid every day,
Would you go as far as saying you couldn't have made this without Armin? Because it sounds like it's...
very often the teams, they are on the stage and everything is fine, and you deny that it was war, what you did 2 years ago and so on. But it's totally clear what Armin did for this project. I chose him after the board because I knew without him I would say I would fail without him doing this. Yeah. I can say that, really. That is absolutely clear.
Yeah.
It was a total clear decision of mine, knowing that I would drown if we don't go that way that I hated sometimes.
Right.
Yeah? I had to put me into that situation. Yeah. Knowing that he would haunt me with time and schedule and everything, and I had to go through that. But I said, do that to me. Yeah. I said, do it, do it.
Yeah.
Although he was going on my nerves, with his being, no, we have to go one more step and so on.
Yeah.
And this was a big change for me, because it was not a comfort zone, not at all, not at all.
And it's a movie, it's an adaptation that it would be easy to fail at, because if you don't get that kernel of what makes that narrative work all the way through, it breaks. And at no point in the movie does it break. You know, the intensity is there all the way through. So as a partnership between director and DP, it's nigh on perfect as far as I can see. And you're still talking to each other, which is...
Yeah, we do, of course.
So the film comes out in November, I think, isn't it?
9th of November, yes.
German cinemas,
And we will, our premiere will be in Zurich International Film Festival. What's quite good for us, because it's a film of Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, of course, kind of, And we wanted to have that internationality. there are only a few words spoken in this movie.
Yeah.
He's silent all the time, this guy, and I think that's very good, a good start for us.
Fantastic, yeah. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up soon. Have we got...